Welcome to the NZ Travel Show, an interactive show where you can ask your NZ travel questions to the experts behind nzpocketguide.com, New Zealand's largest travel guide. The NZ Travel Show will start in exactly 2 minutes. Just the time for you to hit the like button, ring the notification bell, and subscribe if you have not done so yet. nzpocketguide.com has over 3,000 articles covering all aspects of travelling in New Zealand, from a working holiday gap year to tips for a perfect family holiday. The site also features dozens of pre-made itineraries that you can use to plan your ideal trip in New Zealand. It's all available for free at nzpocketguide.com, so check it out. The NZ Travel Show is hosted by Robin, the Operations Manager of South Pacific Pocket Guide, the company behind nzpocketguide.com. The New Zealand Travel Show is also hosted by Laura, a journalist and editor-in-chief of South Pacific Pocket Guide and all its publications, including nzpocketguide.com. We're exactly 1 minute away from the NZ Travel Show. Get yourself comfortable and start asking your NZ travel questions in the chat. Robin and Laura will go over them when the show starts. In 30 seconds, our experts will be live from New Zealand to give you all the practical New Zealand travel tips you need, from the best transport options to the best accommodations and activities to choose for the perfect New Zealand holiday. Live from New Zealand, this is the NZ Travel Show with your travel experts, Robin and Laura.
Hello!
Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday, the 22nd of September, and this is the NZ Travel Show. It's 8 a.m. in the morning. It's so early.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, Lord. So this is the NZ Travel Show. We're here to answer all your questions about traveling in New Zealand. But today we have a little bit of a special theme where we have scoured through all of your comments for the past... we've been on YouTube for like 5 years, 6 years, something like that. And just like the questions we get the most often, and we'll go over them, answer them, have fun with it. And without further ado, let's get started. And good morning, Adil.
Good morning. He says, Kia ora, Robin, Laura, and all the viewers.
And my voice is gone. All right. So one of the questions we guessed the most, on YouTube is, how do I plan an itinerary for my trip to New Zealand, especially with like limited time or specific interest in mind?
Yes, I think you should take this one because you are more of the planner between us two.
Wow, you're dodging this one, aren't you? So if you want to plan your trip to New Zealand, a couple of things to keep in mind. First up, do some compromises, right? So first thing first, you may not be able to do everything, and you may need to cut certain parts of New Zealand you want to visit because some of the drives can be quite long. So keep that in mind. Second, the best way to start planning your itinerary is to ask for 1 extra week off at work. And I know it sounds like a little bit of a joke, but if you can wait a little longer and have more time in New Zealand a little later on, let's say delay your trip for like 2 months or something, it is so worth it because the flight to New Zealand is so far, you're gonna want to do that much and you won't regret having a bit of extra time. Now, after that, what I usually do is that I take the map of New Zealand, or just the Northern Island, or just the South Island. If you're coming to New Zealand for less than 2 weeks, only do one of the both islands. It will make your life significantly easier. And then on that map of New Zealand, place start marking the places that you really, really, really want to see. And slowly that's going to create your itinerary. After that, try to have a look at the places which are similar to each other that you already have perched, right? So sometimes you see one beautiful lake and another beautiful lake and a third beautiful lake and then a fourth beautiful lake, and then you realize, well, there is a lot of beautiful lakes in New Zealand, so you may not need to see all of them. So then after that, you need to curl a little bit and remove a few of the items, especially things that's going to be more away from your main roads, and then you should have a nice skeleton of your trip. Then the last step of your trip is to allocate the amount of days you want to spend in each places according to the amount of activities that you want to do. So if there is 5 things you want to do in one place, maybe schedule 3 days, etc. So place your days and see what can fit within your itinerary. And lastly, there is going to be some places where you want to go just to do one specific things, and that's it. I get it. We've all been there. So at that point, for all those places where you only have a limited amount of things that you want to be doing there, either you curl it or you do a little bit more research. A great resource is our website, nzpocketguide.com, where you'll be able to find a lot of other things to do, a lot of alternative things to do, so you can add items to your itinerary. It's always good to have 2 to 3 alternative things to do in all of the places you're going to be visiting, because trust me, the New Zealand weather can be very unpredictable. We help a lot of people plan their itinerary in New Zealand via Patreon. There's a link in the description. You may want to check it out. And also a great way to plan your itinerary is to head to nzpocketguide.com, click on trip IDs, and then you have itineraries pre-made by us, the travel expert of New Zealand. So how about that? Cool. Anything you want to add?
No, I think that was perfect.
Here you go. Next up. Is it safe and advisable to drive from Te Anau to Milford Sound without any mountain road driving experience, Laura?
So the good thing about the road between Te Anau and Milford Sound is that it's not a crazy mountain road or anything like that. It is all sealed the whole way. It abides by all the usual New Zealand road rules. So you would have to become familiar with, for instance, how to use one-way bridges in New Zealand. That would be the main one for the Milford Sound Road. So just as long as you are comfortable with long drives, you you are aware of all those New Zealand road rules, you should be fine. However, if you are uncomfortable with taking, long drives and a little bit iffy, there are a lot of big buses that are using that road as well, and sometimes it can get a bit narrow, so you really have to be focused the whole way. If you think that's not really for you, then there are plenty of really amazing tours that go up and down that road, taking you to Milford Sound, also stopping along the way to check out some of the main attractions like the Mirror Lakes, the Eglinton Valley, that sort of thing, all the sort of things that you would usually stop on a road trip anyway. So if you're unsure, I would recommend doing one of those tours.
Yeah, and if you want to drive it on your own and you're stressed about it, just do it slowly. As Laura mentioned, there's so many pit stops along the way. Take your time. It's a drive that millions of people do every day. Every year, yeah. And so, yeah, it's definitely worth doing.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, Laura, you know this one. We do it all the time. We answer it every time on YouTube. And if you do have some questions, by the way, go nuts. We are here for you, so ask your questions right now. But Laura, should I rent a car or camper van? And what are the hidden costs associated with each?
Okay, so mainly focusing on the hidden costs, I say that there is probably a bit more hidden costs that come associated with renting a camper van compared to renting a car. And usually those hidden costs are more to do with paying for accommodation as you are traveling around. A lot of people hire motorhomes or camper vans thinking that they can camp for free everywhere they go.
You cannot camp everywhere in New Zealand for free.
Yeah, you have to, a few times during your trip, you will have to pay for accommodation. And holiday parks, for example, where you have all the facilities to recharge your camper van or motorhome, that's something that you will have to do now and then, usually every 3 days. So going to those places with those facilities, it's usually about $40 per night, which can be quite a lot if you have planned to basically spend nothing on accommodation. So yeah, bear that in mind, that accommodation costs are associated with motorhome and camper van travel, even though it may seem like it's not.
Is there any road tolls in New Zealand that you have to be aware of?
So toll roads are not really a big thing in New Zealand. There's 3 toll roads in New Zealand. One of them that most like the one that some people may hit is going between Auckland and the Bay of Islands, but there is a way around it if you want to avoid it. Otherwise, it is a faster way and is only a few dollars. I think it's less than $4 New Zealand dollars. So, you know, it is very much affordable. Just be aware of that one. But elsewhere in New Zealand, there's no other major toll roads that you're likely to be taking on the standard sort of road trip around New Zealand. So you don't need to really worry about those hidden fees.
Anything to know about petrol or road user charges or ferry costs or anything extra hidden costs that people may not think about?
Yeah, so if you are planning on taking your vehicle between the North Island and the South Island, of course, taking your vehicle does come with a cost for the ferry. That ferry cost usually includes a person, like the driver and the vehicle, and then you'll have to pay for extra passengers. And that may be in your party.
Or leave them behind.
So yeah, bear that one in mind as well. And for road user charges, this is a charge that is applied to diesel vehicles only. So if you are renting, say, a big motorhome, it may be a diesel vehicle. Look at the policy with the rental company. Sometimes they, in rare instances, include that in the rental fee. In other instances, there may be just like a sort of flat fee that you have to pay at the end. So just bear that in mind, especially if you are getting a diesel vehicle or more likely a huge motorhome.
How about for parking? Should I budget a certain amount of money for parking, or is it usually free in New Zealand?
It's usually free. The only limited places where you may have to pay for parking are places like Wellington, if you're staying in the city centre, Auckland, if you're staying in the city centre, Christchurch, if you're staying in the city centre.
Queenstown for sure.
Queenstown, if you're staying right within town. So they're kind of like, I'd say, the four main ones, but everywhere else you can usually find parking for free.
There you go. So car, camper van, kind of up to you. You have to plan your trip accordingly, and the hidden costs. Here's what came up on the top of our heads.
Yes.
All right, next question. How is it easy to find accommodation when traveling by car, and do I need to book in advance, or can I just drive around and rock into hotels when I want?
Okay, it first of all, it depends what season you're traveling. If you're traveling in summer, which is between December to February, but that's more, the season's kind of extended between, say, end of November to March. If you're traveling in that time, that's the busiest time to travel in New Zealand. So therefore, it is a really good idea to plan as far ahead as possible for those months when booking accommodation. For the rest of the year, I would still do a little bit of an advanced booking just to ensure that you've got the place that you prefer, to sort of meet your budget as well, because obviously all the really good deals on rooms will be the first ones to go. So if you want to make sure that you get your first choice, basically, I would still book a little bit in advance, even if that's just, say, a week or a couple of weeks in advance, even in the low season. Especially book in advance if you want to stay, for instance, in Milford Sound, in Lake Tekapo, those places that are really big tourist hotspots, but they're actually
tiny town.
really small towns, so you have limited accommodations there. But yeah, otherwise, it is possible to go around and rock up places, say in the low season. You just might not always get your first pick.
Possible, but not recommended.
Yeah.
Next question, Laura. Okay, let's talk budget transport. So what are the best budget transportations around the South Island for like backpackers or trying to save? You want to do the South Island on the cheap?
Yes. So to get between, say, major towns, an obvious good option is the intercity bus. This is the national bus line of New Zealand. There is only really one national coach company. Although in the South Island they do have some different companies, basically Intercity works with those companies to basically make up their entire network. So yeah, basically booking an intercity trip between, say, Christchurch and Queenstown is pretty standard and is like basically the cheapest way to do it. Once you get to certain towns, for instance, you have public transport in Queenstown, in Dunedin, in Christchurch, in Invercargill. the ones that come to the top of my head. So you have a public transport network in those towns where it's basically buses taking you around. And then if you are in places like Queenstown, for instance, which is a big tourist hotspot, there are, say, guided tours that will take you to various areas around that otherwise are quite hard to get to. Also, if you're doing any tours, say you're wanting to do bungee jumping or whitewater rafting or any of those sort of activities from Queenstown, remember that transport is usually provided for people that don't have their own transport. So you'll meet in, say, the town's office, and then they'll take you out to their location where they do the activity.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Nothing to add. That was very thorough. Okay, so next question. Do I need an international driver permit, IDP, to drive around New Zealand, or is my foreign driver license sufficient?
Your foreign driver license is sufficient, first of all, if it is a full driver's license. It's not a provisional or a learner's. So it's a full driver's license, and it is written in English so that the English-speaking people of New Zealand can understand it. If it is not in English, then you will need to get an international driving permit, an IDP, to go along with that that driving license. So you need both your original driving license and an IDP if it's not written in English. Bring them both.
And can I rent a car with an overseas driver license?
Absolutely. You can rent a car with an overseas driving license. Again, same rules apply. If it's not in English, then you will need to also present your IDP as well as your original driving license.
Nice one. Good. Very informative. I love it.
Thanks.
I'm full about positive reinforcement today. All right. Laura, which spot is the best to swim with dolphins? Kaikoura or Akaroa?
Okay, so obviously this is more of a subjective question. For me, I think the best spot to swim with dolphins is Kaikoura.
Why?
Because
you did bait me on this one.
So for Kaikoura, first of all, the water quality in my experience has been a little clearer. There's usually a little bit more sediment in the water at Akaroa. So I felt like your underwater experience with the dolphins is usually a little clearer and easier to see. Also, the types of dolphins that you are swimming with in Kaikoura are the dusky dolphins. They're very curious. They'll come up to you and swim around you, and they also travel in large pods. So basically, an unsuccessful dolphin swim in Kaikoura is quite rare because there's heaps of dolphins around, and they seem to be as intrigued by us as we are of them. However, in Akaroa, you are swimming with Hector's dolphins, which are not Hector's dolphins, which are, they're really small. They're actually the smallest type of dolphin in the world, smallest species, and they're a little more elusive. They aren't as, they're usually not swimming in huge pods. They're usually maybe one or two together, or maybe up to, say, 5. Like, their pods are really quite small, so that sort of chance of getting to swim with them is quite low in comparison to Kaikoura. And again, I talked about the sediment sometimes in the waters there. On the plus side, it is more sheltered in Akaroa. So a lot of people do end up being seasick on the tour with in Kaikoura, because you are in more of that sort of open water with the big waves and stuff. We have seen quite a few times people being sick in their snorkel there. So if that's an issue for you, then in Akaroa it is much more sheltered.
Yep, so I actually have the exact same opinion. If you want the best experience, it's Kaikoura, but if you can't handle the sea, it's Akaroa.
Yes.
All right, so next question for you, Laura. The next question is, what are the customs regulations for bringing medications, tobacco, and other items into New Zealand? And before you answer, I'm going to say that those customs and regulations may change, so make sure that you always check the New Zealand Customs website for the latest regulations.
Yeah.
This is what is the case in late 2024.
Okay. For medications, you can bring most medications to New Zealand. Obviously, you can't bring illegal drugs. It's a big no-no. Keep the marijuana at home. But yeah, if you are coming to New Zealand, then with prescribed medication, you should have it in basically the label saying, who it's prescribed to. That's kind of a regulation in New Zealand. Not that customs usually check, but it is just a good idea to have it in the original packaging where it is labelled to somebody in your party that's travelling. What are you loving?
You can't bring the marijuana, big no.
Just thought maybe it needed to be said.
No, I understand that it's legal in a lot of places. You just sounded like a grandma.
When you're bringing prescribed medication, usually the limit is like 3 months supply. So bear that in mind. When it comes to things like tobacco, alcohol, this all is under the duty-free allowance. So whether you bought it at duty-free or not, it still has to, basically if it's alcohol and tobacco, there is just a certain amount that you can bring. And that's it. So for tobacco in particular, for New Zealand, currently it is 50 cigarettes or 50 grams of tobacco products, 50 grams of cigars, or a mixture of all three, as long as the whole quantity of the amount of tobacco that you're bringing is no more than 50 grams.
What is it in freedom units?
In freedom units, that's 5 ounces.
There you go.
So take a look at the duty-free allowances for things like alcohol and tobacco for bringing into New Zealand. Other things to keep in mind is that you can't bring, say, fresh food into New Zealand. You can't bring fruit and vegetables. You cannot bring honey. There are, basically certain food products. If you have any packaged products, they have to be sort of sealed. So don't bring your open bag of chips with you. They need to be sealed and like proper manufactured goods. Not something, not the cookies that your grandma baked, that sort of thing.
Not those funny cookies that grandma may bake, says Laura, the big no marijuana lady.
Basically, there is a big biosecurity sort of restrictions at the border for fruit, vegetables, that sort of thing. So we do have articles on nzpocketguide.com about what to declare when arriving in New Zealand, because you will be asked to declare certain items that you may or may have not packed for coming to New Zealand.
And if you have any doubt, declare it so you avoid the fine. Cool. And remember, kids, stay away from drugs. Okay. Laura, how difficult is it?
Snoop Dogg has a real problem getting into New Zealand.
He's a living bag of weeds anyway. All right. I'll let you have a drink before the next question. You've done really good. It was just, you just really sounded like a grandma. Okay. Laura, how difficult is it to drive around the South Island in winter, and what do I need to be aware of?
Okay, so it's not difficult to drive around the South Island in winter. The thing you need to be aware of is that most of the main roads around the South Island are on the coast. Therefore, it very, 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 very rarely gets snow on the road.
Very.
However, on those mountain passes, for instance, if you're doing, say, the Arthur's Pass Road or the Lewis Pass Road or the Hast Pass Road, this is all the roads. Those ones go over mountain passes. That is when, if there is a big snow dump, then obviously there's going to take some time for the roads to clear, or you'll need to have snow chains for going over those mountain passes. That kind of happens like just maybe about 5 days out of the whole winter season. So you can get away with not, say, hiring snow chains. You will just, what I would advise to do is to, before you're going on basically any journey in winter in the South Island, is to just have a quick look at the roads on the transport agency website, so New Zealand Transport Agency. Have a look if there's any road closures, anything like that, or any road warnings before setting off. Just have maybe a bit of flexibility in case you cannot pass that mountain that day. Maybe you need to do it tomorrow instead. So just be aware to have a bit more flexibility in case that happens on the rare occasions that it does.
Indeed. Good answer.
Thank
Laura,
you, Robin.
next question. Are you ready?
Yeah.
When should I book hotel? Like how far in advance if I want to balance a little bit of flexibility and make sure I get the place I want?
Okay, for balancing the flexibility, I would say if you're traveling in summer,
Which is?
between we'll do extended summer dates from end of November to March. I would book perhaps 2 weeks in advance, which is really like, still cutting it fine, but maybe having a bit more flexibility. You really do have to book quite far in advance for summer. It can get really, really busy. For the rest of the year, I think booking maybe like, say 5 days ahead if you want to be flexible. While you're on the road and you're like, okay, I'm gonna make it to this place in 5 days, maybe I'll do my booking now. If you want to travel more like that, then while still getting the place you want somewhat, then yeah, I would say 5 days in advance is an alright option.
I would add that if you want to go to some of the hotspots that we mentioned previously, like Milford Sound or Lake Tekapo, etc., you probably have to book, especially for summer, a couple of months in advance at that point.
Yes.
Otherwise, if you want to be a bit, if you can be a bit flexible with your itinerary, yeah, 5 days good.
Yeah.
All right, Laura, where can I find traditional haka performances on the southern end of New Zealand?
Ooh, the South Island. Okay, let me just wrangle my brain for a second. I'm pretty sure...
You guys can picture a rodeo, picture like a cowboy kind of wrangling a kiwi bird right here. That's basically what it looks like. But kiwi birds have extremely sharp fangs actually at the bottom of their feet. Not fangs, claws at the bottom of their feet. So they actually hurt quite a lot for having held quite a few. Yeah, it's actually a painful rodeo. Did you get your answer?
Can you get that article up, which is like the 50 places to see Maori? Like for the South Island, I'm like, oh, that place is closed, that place is closed. Let's see where is open right now. So yeah, we're looking at an article which is 50 best places to experience the Maori culture in New Zealand. And, okay, one has come to my mind. In Wanaka, Lake Wanaka, there is a place called Wanahaka. Which a really good pun there. So what they do there is they'll introduce you to the town with like a traditional welcoming ceremony called a porphyry. It's not a full haka. They don't like have a huge group of people doing the haka, but it's more of an intimate experience. They're quite a sort of small company, so they will have like their small like family doing the experience, maybe 1 or 2 guides, and yeah, that's a good way to sort of get that sort of cultural introduction to a place like you would have basically in a more traditional sense when you are going to, say, a marae in New Zealand, which is a sort of a meeting grounds, Maori meeting grounds. Then they would do this sort of traditional welcome. So you get to experience that, but on the South Island in Wanaka.
And if you want like most of the Maori culture kind of experiences, they're usually on the northern end of New Zealand. But one thing which is very unique to the Maori culture and which is also very unique to the southern end of New Zealand is Greenstone. So Greenstone or Punamu, sorry for the pronunciation, is held in high beliefs in the Maori culture, and there's plenty of amazing places where you can do greenstone carving. You can check out carvers literally doing their work and purchase amazing greenstone around the southern and especially around the west coast. So it's a very unique part of the Maori culture, which is pretty much only experienceable, is that a word? I don't know, but only experienceable on the southern end of New Zealand. Here you go.
Excellent.
Moving on, more info on NZ Pocket Guide. As Laura said, there is an article with 50 places to experience the Maori culture. So yeah, check it out. Cool. Next up on our list, what are the differences between the Blackwater rafting tour, or the different tours? Sorry, let's try it again.
Yeah.
Laura.
Robin.
Laura.
Robin.
Laura.
Robin.
Okay, what are the differences between the different Blackwater rafting tours, and are they suitable for beginners?
Okay, so Blackwater rafting tours. First of all, when people talk about Blackwater rafting, they think there's usually just the one company that does Blackwater rafting, because they're called the Blackwater Rafting Company in Waitomo, but there is very similar caving experiences that you can do from different companies. So, for instance, there's Waitomo Adventures, which does something very similar. Are they suitable for beginners? Yes. Pretty much all of the tours are suitable for beginners. They have very well-trained guides on hand that are looking after people from... What?
Oh, it's just when you say well-trained, I picture them giving the pull and getting a treat.
Try it. Sometimes they give treats. Sometimes they give chocolate fish.
That's true.
So, yeah, almost like you are the dog that can give the paw.
Woof.
So, yeah, the best tour for beginners with the Blackwater Rafting Company in particular would be the Black Labyrinth tour. Is that right? The Black Labyrinth. That is mainly doing like tubing through some underground caves, through some streams with glowworms going above you. Even doing some practice outside of the caves before going in. So yeah, that's a really good sort of introduction to the whole experience. Maybe if you're a little bit nervous, that's a good one to go for. But then if you want to do some more hands-on adventure stuff, maybe some abseiling, a lot more scrambling and climbing, then definitely any one of the Waitomo Adventures tours is a really good one to do. There's plenty there, and we have done a video recently on the channel of comparing all the best ones. And then if you go with Blackwater Rafting Company, then their Black Abyss tour is the most hands-on adventure experience. The tour's also a little bit longer. I think it's 5 hours compared to the Black Labyrinth's 3 hours. So yeah, there's some differences there. If you would like to compare some of those activities, we do have comparisons on nzpocketguide.com, checking out the different, we have we have articles on the difference between the different cave tours in Waitomo. So yeah, have a look.
Indeed. All right. Next question. How much does a 2.5 weeks tour of New Zealand usually cost? What's the average cost for that?
So always remember that so many people travel so differently that it's always really hard to give a very precise number. Robin will try and give a very, a ballpark figure right now, but compared to say a budget traveler just staying in hostels, maybe traveling by bus, that's going to be a very, very small amount compared to somebody that, say, rents a luxury motorhome, staying from holiday park to holiday park, doing every whitewater rafting and bungee jumping they can find. There's very different ways of traveling in New Zealand.
All right, so if you're on the self-drive tour around New Zealand, including both the North Island and the South Island, the cost will usually range between 4,000 New Zealand dollars and 7,500 New Zealand dollars per person. This is on the budget end of the scale right here, which is going to be just accommodation, car hire, a couple of activities and meals. You can shave off a lot of money depending on which accommodation level you decide to go for, but that's usually the kind of budget you should allow for. If you want a more luxurious experience with some premium accommodation, some organized activities, some scenic flight, cruises, all these kind of things, usually you can go for about $10,000 per person. If you only include, if you want to go onto a guided tour of New Zealand, that would be something like a small type of bus, coach bus with guides and etc. And that would be between 6,500 to about 9,000 New Zealand dollars. And obviously, you have to keep in mind that all of those prices will vary depending on your taste, your travel habits, and the level of luxury that you're treating yourself with. But I hope that this ballpark did help. Did it help?
Yeah.
There you go. All right, next up, what are the options for camping with a tent, and is the dog pass suitable for car travelers?
Okay, so options for camping with a tent. Obviously mentioned the DOC Pass, so Department of Conservation, that's what DOC stands for. They maintain a lot of the campgrounds around New Zealand, not all of them, but a huge amount nationwide. So that's definitely a good, one of the cheaper options for camping with a tent. It's very rare that you can camp for free with a tent. There's a handful of free campsites in New Zealand. They're usually quite remote, hard to find. So basically you'll have to do a lot of research into that. We do have articles on NZ Pocket Guide about free campsites, but yeah, basically it's up to you to do the research there.
Giving people homework right here.
Yeah.
Grandma's back.
So another option for camping in a tent is to stay in holiday parks. These have much more facilities. They'll have, huge bathroom blocks. They'll have kitchens. Basically, it's like staying at, say, a hostel, which has a lot of facilities, but you have the option of staying in a tent in a campsite. I'm about to sneeze. Oh.
No?
No?
Yes. Are you sneezing?
Okay, yeah. So there's some options for campsites and camping. We do have obviously much more articles on nzpocketguide.com if you want to check out some more nitty-gritty options. Some hostels do allow you to stay in a tent in their garden, for instance, but that's kind of rare as well. What else was in the question?
That's it.
Okay, cool.
Good job. Okay, so Laura, how can I travel the length of the North Island in 2 days, and what's kind of my best options to stop by?
Ooh, in 2 days, obviously that's very short. You would probably be best to stick to State Highway 1, which is the main road that goes right through the middle of the North Island. So say you're starting in Auckland, which most people arrive in New Zealand, going down to Wellington. You could you could do some quick pit stops, for instance, at Hooker Falls, which is in Taupo, which is there's a massive lake in the middle of the North Island. Hooker Falls is a really easy roadside attraction to visit with like huge waterfall, tumbling rapids. Really scary. So there's like that option. Obviously some nice little towns to stop by along the way. You could, for instance, stop at the Hamilton Gardens for a quick pit stop, about an hour and a half from Auckland. So we'll go Hamilton Gardens, Hooker Falls down here.
Where do you spend the night?
You could definitely spend the night, say, I would say spend the night in Taupo maybe before making that trip down to Wellington. So Taupo's a big, it's quite a tourist-friendly town. You have some beautiful sort of lake sailing, that sort of thing. So you could do an evening lake sail to the Maori rock carvings there. And then on your second day, you are driving all the way down to Wellington. Unfortunately, there's not a huge amount of pit stops. We do have a video on this channel of some of the pit stops you could be doing. But honestly, that bit of road between Taupo and Wellington on State Highway 1, if you don't have the time to get off it, there's very little to do.
I mean, Palmerston North is a really cool place to stop at, with quite a fair amount of attractions, especially attractions that will kind of just take you an hour or two. So it's a great way to break up the drive. So that's where I would stop. Yeah,
you could stop at Manawatu Gorge, just a little bit of a detour off that state highway.
Nice.
Yeah, and then once you arrive in Wellington, you have the time to do some attractions there. You could go to the Te Papa Museum, which is the National Museum of New Zealand. You could go to Zealandia, see some beautiful native birds, that sort of thing.
And just a note that if you wanted to drive the length of the North Island in 1 day, it is doable. It's just a very long drive, but that's the thing that we hear really often.
Yeah, and even in 2 days, that is
too much driving.
That's too much driving.
Okay, moving on. Okay, what should I pack for my trip to New Zealand, and what do most people forget to pack?
Main things to remember to pack for New Zealand is a rain jacket. The weather is very on and off. It is very good to have a good, decent rain jacket, because when it does rain in New Zealand, it's usually really heavy and can soak you right through. And a lot of the New Zealand activities are outdoor activities and outdoor attractions. So it's good to have basically a good outdoor clothing. So bearing that in mind, layers as well. So having, say, like an underlayer, which is like, say, like a merino wool underlayer or whatever sort of material you prefer. Having that on the underlayer, then having a mid layer like a hoodie, that sort of thing, and then your rain jacket. Kind of a good setup there. Having some quick dry hiking pants is good if you're going to be doing a lot of the short walks to see the natural attractions, again, so that they can dry quickly in case it rains. Waterproof hiking shoes is a really good option as well. So yeah, really having that sort of outdoor clothing, attire, all ready to go is like the main things to remember for New Zealand. I rarely would, I basically wouldn't advise traveling around in jeans the whole way. You know, it's kind of like, that's your standard city attire, but for New Zealand, because of the type of activities you're usually doing, you'll be a lot more comfortable if you get yourself some good outdoor clothing.
And I would add that a reusable water bottle will save you heaps of money on traveling in New Zealand, because buying drinks is expensive, and you can fill in your water bottle in pretty much any tap in the country, as the water out of the tap is delicious, coming from those beautiful mountain springs.
Fantastic addition, Robin.
Oh, I feel all happy. Okay, next question. How do I navigate all the visa requirements to come to New Zealand and the NZETA? What the hell is that?
Okay, so yeah, this has got quite complicated over the years, I will not lie. So, thing to know, if you are a visitor coming to New Zealand, you're going to come here just to do traveling, then you need to check whether you need to get a visitor visa or the NZETA. For most countries, the NZETA is the one to go for. You can do it through an app on your phone, or you can go through the NZETA website. You basically put in your details there. You'll need your passport in order to do that. You will have to pay fees, which basically it all comes into one fee, but you'll have to pay 2 fees, and then that will basically be valid for, is it 1 or 2 years? I can't remember off the top of my head, but that will be valid for, Robin's just quickly scrolling.
That's okay, continue.
For our beautiful website to find out.
What's the name of the website?
nzpocketguide.com, so you can find all this information on there. But it's valid for 2 years from the time that you apply for it. So it's valid for a good amount of time. And that's what most people need to get if they are from basically most countries coming to New Zealand. However, if you are from one of those countries that is not valid for applying for the NZETA, then you will have to apply and pay for a visitor visa. The good thing about that, though, is that all the fees are therefore included in the visitor visa. So you don't have to, navigate you don't have to think about the NZETA and paying the IVL and you basically, once you've gone for the visitor visa, you've applied for it, you've paid for it, all the fees are included in that, so that's kind of very easy to get, easy to follow process from there. Best to go to Immigration New Zealand's website to find out more about the visitor visa and whether you need it, or whether whether it's best to go for the NZETA. So yeah, 2 different paths for visiting in New Zealand.
Indeed, and so we have more information. As you can see, it's a little complex. We have more information on NZ Pocket Guide. Just head to nzpocketguide.com, and in the search bar, just type NZETA, and we'll guide you through it in a very easy manner, and it's all free, so happy days. And the last question for today, Laura, what are the best spots for bird watching on the North Island of New Zealand?
So some of the islands just off the shores of Auckland are really good for bird watching, because they are basically have a natural sort of predator-proof barrier. So
the sea.
The
Pacific Ocean.
Yeah. So the thing about New Zealand is that New Zealand has a lot of beautiful native birds, but they are under threat because of the different species that humans have brought to New Zealand. And basically they have threatened, the natural habitats of these birds. So having birds on islands where, those habitats can be controlled more, that's where the birds have been thriving the most in New Zealand. So off the coast of Auckland, you have some amazing islands like Tiri Matangi is probably the best island that we've been to for seeing a variety of different birds. Also, Rangitoto Island, which is a volcanic island, is quite good for birds as well. So there's a couple of ones that come to mind. Now, sticking to the mainland of the North Island, the next best places that you can go to are places which have, they're basically bird sanctuaries that have these predator-proof fences. So they're controlling the environment with these sort of state-of-the-art fences that you can learn all about once you visit. So some good places to go to is Mount Totari, which is
it's also known as Sanctuary Mountain if you want to Google it in an easy way.
Yes, also known as Sanctuary Mountain, so that's a really good place to spot different birds there. They have guided tours as well as you can do self-guided hikes around that area, so that's really cool. And also a really good place to go to is in Wellington. Very interestingly enough, pretty central to in the center of the capital city. They have a big predator-proof sanctuary called Zealandia. What's really cool about this place as well is that they have different feeding stations, so you're likely to actually see birds really easily because they are attracted to the different sort of bird feeders and that sort of thing that they have around. So that's a really good place to go as well.
Indeed. All right, so that's going to wrap up this live show. We answered about 20 of the most popular kind of YouTube questions we usually get right here on YouTube. I don't know why I said the word YouTube. Hit some of the buttons, make the algorithm happy. We're seeing you in 2 weeks' time. That's right, we're taking the week off next week, but we're seeing you in 2 weeks' time with more either questions or another theme. I haven't decided just yet. In the meantime, if you have any questions of your own, put them in the comment of this video. We'll get to them, we always do. And aside from that, Adil, have a lovely day. Anthony, thank you very much. And we see you all next time. And in 15 minutes, we'll be in the Patreon group call. So yeah, if you're on Patreon, 15 minutes and happy days. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.